Hey, everybody, if you're here for Jonathan, please have a seat. We're about to start PorcFest exclusive via Zoom. Jonathan Mozenter.
Thanks, everybody, for coming. Sorry I couldn't be there in person. So my presentation's on how to master the traps of the mind. My name is Jonathan Mozenter, and I'm going to alternate between showing you the slides and showing you in person. So let's switch over. Here's me. So I thought I'd just start off a little quickly. I want to let you know, save your questions to the end. I'm going to present some cool material about transcending the traps of the mind and talk about, we're going to do some practices, a guided meditation, a couple energy practices. And I thought I'd start off just telling you briefly a little bit about myself. My core passion and training is all in the process of transformation, both the individual and collective. I have an undergraduate and graduate degrees from Boston University. I studied psychology, organizational behavior, and change management, which is like the process of change. And I've also studied with a lot of more esoteric teachers. I've deeply studied in Tibetan Buddhism, the lineages of Ma Mudra and Dzogchen, and we're going to talk a little bit about what I've learned from them. And I'm also really into energy, and energy comes into different kinds of forms. Something I've studied with an energy teacher who taught me about how to chi, and another guy taught me about EpiEnergetics, which is mastering the energy and information to produce the extraordinary. And also energy comes in other forms, like from doing something called shadow work, which is also about mastering the traps of the mind. And my core passion is to create a voluntary world that is both peaceful and abundant. And I believe the wisdom I have here will greatly aid that process. So I love this quote by a spiritual teacher, Hindu Krishnamurti: if we really understand the problem, the answer will come out of it, because the answer is not separate from the problem. So we all, gather around, we're interested in more freedom. And we know society is made up of humans, and humans have energy and minds. So my philosophy is we learn to master the individual human and how humans work together, then we will be able to achieve whatever we want. So that's kind of my specialty is human flourishing. So we're going to talk a lot about that. So my intention today, my three intentions are that everyone leaves with at least one insight, one nugget. And I want people to understand a deep understanding of the role of the mind and energy in today's problems. And then also insights on how to use narrative, like stories we tell about ourselves and we tell about life, and energy and consciousness in co-creating a peaceful, free, and abundant world. And so what I'd like to start off first is an energy exercise, a really short one that's going to get us all in the right frame of to really digest this material. And I'm going to come on screen here. Okay. So in order to do this energy exercise, I'm going to ask you to raise your left hand. And I want you all to think about a time where you had a really powerful, energy-rich experience, like a peak experience in life. You maybe had a great concert. It's something to do with like a romantic partner, a special moment, something with friends, a flow state, and just bring that memory and think about it and bring that energy and state right here, right now. And now I want you to bring your other hand up, and I want you to think about when you're in this energy-rich state, like how tenaciously fascinated with what's going on you have. Like you're just glued. It's like you can't take your eye off because it's such an epic moment. And just cultivate that feeling of flow state and total fascination with about what you're about to observe. And now I want you to mix these two energies. So we've got this energy-rich flow state, and we got this tenacious fascination. And I want you to feel the energy richness, and then quickly go over to tenacious fascination and start to bring your hands closer and closer together as you go back and forth. And we're going to mix them so they're one thing. When I get to 0, I'm going to count from 3 to 0. Clap your hands together. 3, 2, 1. And now we've got energy rich with tenacious fascination in this hand, and bring this bundle into your left hand and just hold it up. And we're just going to mix in one ingredient. So we got tenacious fascination and energy richness. And now in the other hand, we're going to bring in the upper mind, our ability to handle complexity and complex and creativity. So we're going to need some of that. I'm going to bring some really cool concepts, but they really need to activate our upper mind for this. So let's just think of a time when we were solving life's problems and it just came effortlessly and easy. And just kind of imagine a time when that happened. You're like flowing in school or whatever your passion is. Everything just came easily. Your upper mind was really in flow. And then we're going to go back to the other hand where we've got energy rich, tenacious fascination, and we've got our upper mind really lit up. And we're going to start to go back and forth really fast, and we're going to start to bring them together. 3, 2, 1, 0. We'll clap our hands. And now just imagine that whole energy is coming all the way through your field. And you now have tenacious fascination with energy rich, and your upper mind is totally activated for my entire presentation. Cool. And that's just a quick trip called bundling of energy to get an energy jump. So with that, I'm going to get into the rest of the presentation. I'm going to go back to the slides. And okay. All right. So I'm going to start really big. I think we need a new story about life to bring this freedom world that we all want to think. So I actually am very contemplative, and I did a deep meditation over and over and over again about how can anything exist? It's like the impossible question. How can anything exist? And every time I ever did this exercise, I always came to the same conclusion. Whatever I thought might be the answer, I had to ask the next question, well, what created that? And then I come up with an answer, then, well, what created that? And it doesn't matter whether I was looking at metaphysics or science or religion, I always came up with this question, like, what came before it? So I came to this conclusion that the only thing that makes sense to me is that everything in life is a miracle. It's a complete miracle. We are magic in motion. We are literally magic in motion. Existence is a miracle, a complete miracle. And I feel like nobody talks about that, but I think it might be one of the most important things to contemplate on. Like, what if everybody started off thinking, holy crap, everything's a miracle. Existence is a miracle. Now, that doesn't make all the problems of life going away. But if you first started with everything's a miracle and then brought in your problems, there's like a lightness to it. You know, it's like, okay, everything's an opportunity. There might be challenges in the world or the people we call problems, but you know, this is a miracle that I'm even here. And it brings like this higher energy to life. And I feel like it makes everything easy. And that's once I brought this conclusion deep into my heart, life got a lot easier, a lot more effortlessly. I started looking at things a different way. And when I do a lot of client work, and when I bring this to my clients, they seem to have the same exact experiences. So what if that was like a world, everyone in the world was operating from like, hey, life's a miracle. And that was the first lens at which we thought that, you know, just think about that for a second, what that would cause. Because I really do believe we need a new narrative. We've got all these different worldviews kind of clashing, live in this polarized world, and we need a new story about ourselves to help us get us a bump to this new paradigm of freedom and abundance and peace. And I think this is part of the puzzle. This is, and just so you know, I'm a volunteerist. So when I suggest these, I'm what's called a pointing out the way teacher, which means I point out new ideas and it's for people to consider. I don't believe in top-down authoritarianism. So this is just my opinion, my ideas. So, you know, and so that's one idea I think to help us transcend the traps of the mind, is to actually realize and appreciate that everything is a miracle and start from there. So then once I kind of determined that everything's a miracle, I asked myself another thing. You know, is there a primordial question being asked about life that starts it? And this really came to a really interesting conclusion to me, which was like, there could only be one first question that makes any sense from any logic, which is like, if you're absolutely nothing, your first question has to be, well, what's it like to exist? If you're non-existence and you're asking a question, what's it like to exist? Because if you don't have a taste of existence, you can't even ask another question. You can't think of something else to ask. You got to actually have a direct experience of any kind of existence before you're gonna actually be able to ask any other questions. So to me, this is just logic. You know, once you have the idea that something can exist, which is a miracle, then the next thing would be like, well, what's it like? What's it like to exist? And then to me, after that, the next question is, you're going to notice some kinds of existence are better than others. You're going to have preferences, natural preferences, and you're going to want to choose preferences that kind of feel good, that make us happy. And then as you get more and more into that, you're going to want to expound that. So you're going to want to have a positive, like, what is the second question might be like, what's a positive existence after you get a taste of it? And then later on, as you get a positive existence, you're going to ask the question, what does multidimensional abundance look like? And so I actually think we are the ultimate reality experiencing itself to know what it's like to exist. And once we have a taste of what it's like to exist, we're going to want a positive experience. And then we're going to want to have multi-dimensional abundance for everybody. Like if we're the ultimate reality experiencing itself, then anything is possible. We're literally magic in motion. Nobody can explain how anything can exist. And I believe that these are key insights into helping us create a new story about life, to help us get to a new level of development, a higher level of consciousness, a higher and more enjoyment, more multi-dimensional existence. So the question then becomes, to me, it's like, well, if this is kind of obvious in some ways, why don't we actually think like this already? You know, why don't we already experience life as magic? What happened to us? Like you think about it as a joy, you know, a lot of kids just run around running up their hands, everything's epic. Woo, you know, how come as adults we aren't like that anymore? And I had to go deep into some of my specialties of consciousness and energy and psychology to really understand there actually is a very logical reason why we don't experience life as magic. And I'm going to break that down to you, because if, as Krishnamurti says, if we don't really clearly understand the problem, or once we do clearly understand the problem, then we can create the solution. So I'm going to make a case to you why I think we don't experience life as magic. And I'm going to talk about energy and consciousness, and then I'll answer your questions. So, so this is something that I talked about earlier, mentioned EpiEnergetics. It's a new thing that I think very few people know about. My teacher, Donnie, one of my teachers' names is Donnie Epstein, and he teaches this. And EpiEnergetics is the conscious and ecological use of energy and information to produce the extraordinary. And ecological just means matching the right amount of energy for the context. So what he's saying is, like, if you understand there's all these different types of energies, and we're going to talk about that in a moment, what some of the main types of energies are, and we get conscious in how we use them, then we'll have like enough energy to actually manifest our dreams. And that right now we're not using energy in a conscious way at all. And so one of the solutions as what Donnie has kind of taught me is, like, energy, actually what energy level we're at is going to produce our thoughts, feelings, and sensations. If you think about like life, just think about like you ate a healthy meal or you did some exercise and how great you feel and how you experience life, versus like, you know, right before you got to go to bed, or if you ate like some terrible food and you're feeling like poo or you're sick. Just think about how your experience of life is totally different in those states. What if we all got really smart about how we use our energy, and we could use it to transform, you know, our life into our dreams, instead of like the current reality, where I don't think we're that energy conscious as a species, or we are to a certain extent, but we could be a lot more. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. So I want to introduce this concept called coherent energy, which is a really important concept that I also got from Donnie. And it actually is the combination of two things. It's about increasing energy, But increasing energy by itself isn't really necessarily that helpful. Think about a little kid who's like on ADD or something and is just running around like crazy. That's not that useful. But what we really need is coherent energy. By coherent, I mean alignment with nature's patterns. What I've discovered is that each human has their own individual patterns, and we have all these different kinds of archetypes. There's all these different like personality tests. There's a whole bunch of them, and Donnie's got some different patterns. And so they're different. Once we understand that our own personal patterns, and we become a better version of ourselves. And the Tibetans taught me, and my studies of psychology taught me that the mind works in a very certain way, and the psychology works in a very certain way, and very few people really know it. Understand these things. The Tibetans actually, well, what people don't understand about what's interesting about them is they were up in the mountains in a place where nobody could attack them for thousands of years, and it was cold up there, and they spent a lot of time just sitting around looking at their own mind. Like cave yogis, they call them, and they discovered all these cool patterns about the mind that are unbelievably helpful. And I know when I studied them, my eyes just went, wow, I never would have thought about this in a million years, yet this is like life transformative. And we're going to do an exercise very shortly to teach you one of the most important things I learned from these Tibetans. So as somebody who's studied change management for years, working in that field for over 25 years, there are actually known patterns on how to make transformation happen. What if everybody knew those? And Donnie Epstein's has taught me energy patterns. And, there's all these different patterns, something like the hero's journey that people go through, which is another pattern. So there's all these patterns in life. So my conclusion of how we actually make a better world is to discover the actual patterns that exist in nature, these kind of best practices, and then increase our energy and align with them. And if we do that as a species, the highest possible dream for humanity is inevitable. That's my deepest core belief, and I believe we're well on our way. We're living in a very exciting time. I know there's a lot of scary things happening around. We all know about like false flags and surveillance and wars and stuff like that. But I think we've gotten to a place where everybody is so sick of the status quo. We're ready for a new story for life. This is an opportunity, which seems like chaos and potential, like something for disaster happening, is really a huge opportunity for us, because people's minds are now open for something new to come along that's going to make us better people. And so I believe that the things I'm teaching today, recognizing the patterns of life and increasing our energy, are a big part of that. So there are these two kind of major parts of energy that are really important to understand. And it's thing called unbound versus bound. And it's simple, but it's really, really important, especially to understand psychology. So a bound energy is any energy that already has a form. So any person, any word, thought, any object, car, grass, nature, anything that you can actually name is called a bound energy. It's already taken up a form. And then there's something else that we don't think about, which is called unbound energy, which is like this pure energy that made us, that hasn't come into form yet. It's a new energy. And I'm going to come back to this in a little bit about why this distinction and how we can use it. It has to do with psychology and energy. So I want to make that distinction now. So we're going to come back to it in a couple of moments. I'm going to explain how to use this distinction to be a better you. And this is a really important one. All right, next slide. Okay, so now I want to talk, what was that? So now we're going to go into the 6 energetic intelligences that this is a really important distinction. And so I'm going to start with 3 of them, and then I'm going to explain because of how these 3 work together that cause the reason why we don't experience life as magic. And So the first energy intelligence, so I also want to make clear, this is a complicated topic and I could probably do hours just on the 6 energies intelligences, but I'm just going to tell you enough to kind of get the hang of it. So you get so we can really have a deeper conversation. So just to start, the first intelligence is this intelligence called the survivor intelligence, and it's our biology intelligence. And this intelligence job has one job, is to make sure you don't die. That's the entire one. And most of the time we don't need it. And so each of these intelligence have like a bandwidth of energy. And the survivor intelligence doesn't require a lot of energy. We don't really need to use it unless we're really, really in trouble. And so I call it, when I put like 1G, it's just, I'm thinking a good way to think about bandwidth of energy is to compare it to the internet system, you know, with our cell phones. So imagine this bandwidth of energy is like really low. It's just enough. And we're going to come back to why the bandwidth of energies is really, really important. And then so this survivor intelligence just has one job. And so getting back to the EpiEnergetics principle, the same thing is true for all these. We only want to use the survivor intelligence when we actually need it. The problem is some people use these unconsciously in not great ways. Like, so example, if somebody's like got a lot of anxiety, they might be using their survivor intelligence way more than they need to, you know, when it's not appropriate. And there are techniques to help people change the relationship to these different intelligence that make a huge difference. So anyway, so that's the first intelligence, the survivor. And then the next intelligence is called the reactor, or the emotional intelligence. Now, this intelligence is just about our natural reactions to things. So like, stove is hot, move hand away. And when the reactor's working really, really well, that we actually, you get a reaction, a feeling, and it lasts just a few seconds. You know, maybe if it's a big wave, like, you know, somebody dies, you know, it could last a little bit longer, you know, a big emotional wave. But in general, the reactor's job is just to feel things. And if it's working really well, we feel things and we let ourselves feel. And then the emotion kind of passes. That's what its job is, to kind of show us our kind of reaction to things. And the problem is, and this one has like a 2G bandwidth. It needs a little bit more energy than the survivor, but it's not like it needs a ton more. It's just a very natural reaction to things. And I'm going to show you in a second, one of the big problems in life is that most people don't use the reactor appropriately. And I'm going to explain why. And this is one of the core insights into the nature reality that I think people need to understand. So the next intelligence is called the thinker, or the lower mental intelligence. Now, its job is simply to categorize things as good, bad, right, wrong, make a clear boundary so you can make a decision, right? So very clear. This one, again, has another band of 3G. Takes even more energy to it. It's like the reactor is just like instantaneous reacting, but the thinker needs to contemplate, makes a decision. So needs more energy to contemplate both sides of the pole, good or bad, right or wrong. So it takes more energy to do that, where the other one's just more instantaneous. Now, the problem comes, this is one of the key instincts, insights I want people to really get. The way these things work together as we're growing up, like from a child's perspective, is all humans go through this. Initially, at some point in life, we all have an experience that's very intense. It's like maybe our first taste of trauma, you know, and we label it bad. We're bad. You know, we don't have a high enough brain yet to see things from complicated perspectives. But for some reason, it's just natural. Not for some reason, it's natural that we internalize things. That we take the bad way too personally, and we feel like we're going to explode, almost like we're going to die. And it's like the intensity is way too intense. And then what happens is the survivor has to kick in and be like, "Hey, little kid, it's not your time to die yet. You know, you got a lot of life in front of you." And it creates something in the psychology world called egoic defense mechanisms. And a defense mechanism's job is to protect you from what you're not able to experience yet. And so what it does is it replaces that habit with something else. So instead of feeling that thing, it does there's this one guy, Stephen Kessler, has a great book called The 5 Personality Patterns, and he describes 5 primordial different defense mechanisms. And so, for example, one of them is called leaving. So some people, instead of dealing with something, they'll like escape into their head and they'll avoid things. And that's a whole other topic about getting into the specific kinds of defense mechanisms. But I want to make clear is that everybody does this. Every human does this. And what happens is this defense mechanism's job now is like our personality gets fused with this defense mechanism, and we start filtering the entire reality our whole job is to avoid this state that we think we can't handle anymore. And so instead of experiencing the magics right now, some part of our subconscious is always worried that this terrible thing's going to happen and is always on the lookout for this thing. You know, if you've ever heard of like a projection, like you're almost like it's like something in your current reality reminds you of some trauma and you kind of project onto it fear. It's like this irrational fear. We all have this going on, and this keeps our energy very neutral. It's like hard. The great thing about the defense mechanism, it keeps you going from this low energy where you feel like you're gonna die, but then you're spending all this crazy amount of energy in your subconscious. It's taking up all this energy and it keeps you preventing experiencing really high. And you need really high energies to use the higher intelligences, which I'm going to talk about in a couple minutes. So it's really important to understand that these egoic defense mechanisms are the core, one of the biggest problems in human flourishing. The good news is the Tibetans figured out how to totally transcend them. And it's a whole series of different techniques, and it definitely takes time, but it's worth it because you feel like a completely different person. Your energy goes way up. You're a lot happier. You make better decisions. It's easier to get along with people. And I'm going to show you how when you have higher energies, you have more abilities. But before I do that, I actually want to give everybody a tool that they can use right now to learn to transcend their egoic defense mechanisms. And so this is going to be the second exercise, and I'm excited to show this. So this is going to be a guided meditation. So I'm going to come back. I'm going to show you my face why we go through this. So it's going to be a short one, and I'm excited to share this with you. This is a new tool that you guys can take into your life. So for this guided meditation, it's good to get your kind of back up straight. Maybe your feet on your ground, just kind of get grounded a little bit. Maybe your hands on your lap. And this is a meditation about shifting your identity from this story, this trauma story that I was talking about, this ego defense mechanism, to the ability to actually getting into this a higher energy. So now remember I talked about bound versus unbound. This is kind of where it comes in. When you're filtering life through a trauma lens, these ego defense mechanisms, you're using a bound perspective to perceive a bound reality, which is going to create predictable results. So you got bound to bound. That's one way of viewing the world. Now, if you're able to stop referencing this trauma and actually still the mind a little, just a little bit, you're able to bring in unbound energy, which is this pure energy. And the pure energy is what gives you new perspectives. It gives you a higher energy bandwidth to give you a new perspective, to break the stuck patterns. And so that's why, if you ever wondered, why does stillness so effective? Why do meditators meditate to still the mind? It's because they're moving away from a bound perspective, a traumatized perspective, to this unbound pure energy. That's what's going on. So when they say in the Tibetan Buddhism, I don't know if some people may know about this or not, but they talk about trying to achieve no self. Well, no self means idea of like reality. That means that you're orienting from your for these bound perspectives. You really want to get to this place where you can use this pure unbound energy to perceive reality. You're going to have a much better experience. And if we start to cultivate that as a habit, every moment, our days, we start making better choices, better decisions. We're using a pure, higher energy. And what if everyone in the world started to have this capacity? You know, if everyone just starts making better choices because they have better energy, we're going to have a much better world. So it's a really important distinction. So now I'm going to give you a tool to help cultivate unbound energy. So what we're going to do is we're going to get our head straight up, our back, our spine straight up, feet on the ground, our hands on our lap. And I want you to look straight ahead, just like you normally do, like ordinary mind. And you kind of see the objects that you see. You see like the screen of me on there, or whatever. You're out at PorcFest, you're seeing the tent. Now I want you to understand that, like, imagine your five senses are taking in information from your eyes, your ears, you know, if you're tasting anything, and it's all that information is going into something we call consciousness. So imagine this information is going into consciousness, but the consciousness itself is actually clear, invisible, lucid. It's this screen of which life takes place on, and it's kind of like a canvas for life of experience. And so we're just sitting there and we're imagining the senses is taking in, and I want you to take a different perspective now. Instead of focusing on the objects, imagine that you are the actual canvas of life. You are our consciousness itself. You're this lucid, invisible field that's actually taking in the information and not the information itself as an identity. You're just kind of finding this invisible field. It's kind of like an imaginary exercise. Oh yeah, there's a field at which contains all the information. And just for contrast, I want everyone to close their eyes now. Close them real tight. And now maybe you see something black, or maybe with some light coming in. Now I want you to notice that the actual senses are taking in different information right now. However, it's still going to the same consciousness, the same field, this invisible, clear, lucid field that holds everything is actually the same. It's exactly the same. And it's just got different contents because, you know, you closed your eyes and now the visual field is different. And then just for contrast, I want you to turn your head to the right and open your eyes. And for the last time, I want you to look at and take in the information again and notice the ordinary mind of all the objects. And then it's all coming into your mind and it's going into consciousness, which is this lucid, invisible field. And some people call it like consciousness, or some people call it like the field of awareness, or ether, or space. And what the Buddhists discovered, and now turn your heads to me, is that the important shift is to stop disidentifying with the objects and actually realize that you are the space, you are the field of awareness, you are conscious itself. If you start identifying your whole identity with consciousness, then you are here in the present moment. You maybe have heard of like Eckhart Tolle, and he talks about the power of now. So what if we, because right now what's happening is people are fused to a lot of unconscious things and ideas. They think they are their experience, but if they realize they are the observer of their experience and not the experience themselves, then they have the ability to bring this unbound energy to it. Like if they can take a pause and they can like take different perspectives on life and they can have new insights about reality. So all my clients I do these practices with, and I have them choose what phrase they like best, whether it's consciousness or the field of awareness or ether or space. And I have them do this thing called a decree, which is a very short statement that helps get information integrate. So you could say things like, I am the space. That's like an easy one. I'm just the space rather than the contents of the space. Because as you notice, the contents of space always change. They're impermanent. That's what the Buddhists would call impermanent. And if you have this slightly detached perspective where you're the observer or the witness of the material and you identify as being the space itself, you have this ability to take different perspectives on things. There's a Harvard psychologist, Robert Keegan, and he calls it making subject object. When we actually think that everything in our mind is us, including our thoughts and our subconscious thoughts and feelings, then everything's subject. In other words, we're so deep into it that we can't see it. We can't get out of our own way because we're fused with it. But if you make the material of consciousness a object, that you are not it, because you're the witness of it, you're not actually the object itself, then you have the ability of space. You have spaciousness. You have enough space to bring this new unbound energy and take new perspectives on it. And that changes everything. You get new perspectives on life. And this is a very important tool in mastering the traps of the mind. So there are many other ones, but that's one of the basic ones. And that by itself can be a life-altering experience. So I just got a couple more slides, and then we're going to go right into some Q&A. All right. And okay, so now I just want to finish up with talking about the other intelligences, and we're going to finish with an energy exercise, and then I'll let you ask me as many questions as we have time for. So the next intelligence requires a lot more energy. This is like 4G, where we got a lot more energy to do things, because it means it's called the optimizer, or the upper mental. We're able to take, this is where creativity comes. It's more than just the polarizing right, wrong, good, bad. We can take like unlimited perspectives. We can do scenario planning. We can do creativity. We can do problem solving. And the more we can use this intelligence when we're solving a problem, rather than this reactive right, wrong, good, bad intelligence, the better decisions we're going to make as individuals and in collectives. And it takes a lot more energy. And so what I do is one of the things I teach my clients is how to get conscious about which of the intelligences they're using and how to quickly switch to the one that they actually need. So the next two intelligences are actually more transpersonal. In other words, they're the kinds of intelligences that the spiritual elites like the Buddha or Jesus had, people who had like special powers. But here's the thing is, anybody can learn to cultivate these things. You don't have to, it's not like they were necessarily born these ways. Some people believe that, but and some people I think have certain capacities than others. But I came into this world not having any special powers. The most I could do for most of my life was this upper mental intelligence. But then I started doing this meditation, and I started getting more unbound here. And I had my first experience of what's called the illuminator, or the soul intelligence. And that's when your mind gets quiet enough, it brings unbound energy, and it allows energy, like a new thought that comes out of like left field. Funny story, the first time I ever got a soul intelligence blast was like 6 months after I started meditating. I was on Facebook, and somebody posted a movie, and something out of left field, something in my soul said, "Jonathan, you got to watch that movie." And I was like, "What? Where did that come from? What?" And I just was like, "Oh, screw it. It's only 90 minutes. I'll watch the movie." And that movie, I think it was like Thrive or something. That's what got me into like libertarianism. It led to that movie led to me open my mind about mind control and false flags and all kinds of stuff. And that one soul intelligence blast changed my life. I started like I never even heard of volunteerism or libertarianism. I just grew up in a household that was more liberal. And then once I started to get exposed to that idea, I was like, oh, this makes a lot more sense, And so the soul intelligence is really powerful. And as that happened like over 10 years ago. And as I got better at meditating and I started complementing other practices like energy practices, I was able to cultivate the soul intelligence. Now, the soul intelligence requires a lot more energy because it's kind of like has to keep track of everything that's about you. It's like your metacognition. It's like a part of you that hovers above you. And it's also connected to the like a higher power, which I'm going to talk about as the last one, that knows the overall universal plan of how we're going to achieve abundance and freedom and peace for all of humanity. So the last intelligence is called the divine weaver, or the universal spirit. And it's a part of reality that connects all the souls so that they can work together and create the greatest possible outcome. I don't know if some people have ever heard of synchronicities, or where you had such a coincidence that you think, man, that's too coincidental to have been an accident, and that's what the weaver does. That's the weaver's job, is to bring people together just the right time. And the weaver has to keep track of all the souls at the same time and know who to connect one. So I made up a term of 333G because it has to have a crazy amount of energy in order to accomplish its goal. So what I do is I teach people how to use these different energies to manifest their dreams. So I thought we'd just end with an energy bundle, and then I'll ask questions. Okay, so let me stop this. We're going to just do one last energy bundle. So just like we did before, I want you to raise your left hand and just imagine where we are now. In this state of the world where we are, things are kind of chaotic. There's a lot of new technologies coming out that give us a lot of hope, but it hasn't really come together to create the world we know is possible. And then the other hand, we've got unimaginable beauty, freedom, everyone, there's no centralized authority, everything's decentralized. We've got healthy currencies that aren't controlled by a centralized authority. People are free to make their own decisions as long as they don't harm other people. It's peaceful, and people are living in abundance. And when their cup is overfull, they're helping other people who don't have abundance yet. And I want you to just go back and forth from now to this beautiful future that we're all co-dreaming, back and forth. 3, 2, 1. Put your hands together. Basically, what I'm doing here is kind of like prayer 5.0. There's been research by Dean Radin that shows prayer actually works, and this is like a more powerful version of that. So I want you to put that bundle down on your just on the side, and we're just going to bring in the emotions of peace and abundance. So in the left hand, just imagine being really, really peaceful. And then in the other hand, imagine a world of massive multidimensional abundance. Everyone's got enough wealth to do what they need to do. There's freedom everywhere. There's peace. We have enough leisure time. People are living their passions, giving their gifts. So peace, abundance, back and forth, back and forth. Start to bring these two hands together. 3, 2, 1. Boom. And just stick those down on the side. And then we're going to bring in these intelligences. We're going to ask these intelligence for help. So in the left hand, we've got the weaver. Imagine the weaver's on our team. Or of course, he's on team. We're all working together to create this voluntary, libertarian, peaceful world of freedom and abundance. And the weaver's bringing everyone together at the right time and the right place to create this world. And then the other hand, we've got the upper mental intelligence where we see all the souls now are, because the weaver has brought the people together at the right time, just like we are brought together today, that their minds start seeing the world in a new way. They start seeing new possibilities because all these kind of connections, as the internet has brought open all this new information that we can now synthesize to create a much better world. So we've got the upper mentals stimulated by the weaver bringing the right people together at the right time, back and forth. Let's bring the weaver and upper mental together. 3, 2, 1. And now you're going to take the weaver and the upper mental in your left hand, keep them together, bring in peace and abundance. We're going to put them together. So we got upper mental and weaver with peace and abundance. Start to mix them together. 3, 2, 1. So the weavers bring titillating people's minds to bring peace and abundance to the world. And the last one is just with those emotions, we're going to bring in this gap of going from where we are right now to this dream of peace, abundance, and freedom. And we're going to use the upper mental, the weaver, and peace and abundance back and forth, start to bring them together. 3, 2, 1. Boom. Now we've all got this energy ball in our hands. And I want you to let this energy ball, just imagine it going into your own field and charging you up. You might have new experiences right away or over the next coming days and weeks where you've got some new unbound energy because some part of you is no longer fused to your defense mechanism. And you might get some instructions like I did about who you need to talk to or how you can help make this abundant, free, peaceful world happen. And just imagine your aura and your energy is all charged up. And then imagine all our bundles are coming up and they're all combining. And now this big bundle is getting bigger, 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 bigger. And now it's surrounding the entire Earth. Now the entire Earth's energy is coordinated to achieve this goal, this dream of freedom, peace, and abundance for all. And so it is. And I do that exercise because our mindset is really important. And when we really believe that that's possible and that we're all playing a role in a grand narrative to create that happen, then we do the things we need to do. And so I think these exercises are really, really important to get our energy directed in the right way. So we've got a few more minutes left. Does anyone have any questions?
Touched on a lot of really big ideas.
Yeah.
Do you have particular philosophers that we could dig into some of this more, or something that we can read, or YouTube channels or something where we could just really kind of pick up the torch and learn more?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll point out two things. From the Tibetan Buddhisms, there's a book called Pointing Out the Dharmakaya, and it gives you a lot of great questions to get more intimate with your mind. So that's a great book, and it's really cheap on Amazon. And then a teacher I work with named Donnie Epstein, he can really expand on the energy topics. He's got a new book coming out, I think in the fall or something. I don't know the name of it, but he's got some other books. Just Google his name, Donnie Epstein Energy. He's got like a book about the seasons that's really, really important, or the stages of transformation, I think it might be called. And it really gets into some of these energies and the process of transformation. I think those are two good places to start. And I will be having my own website, Mozenter.com. Will be up in the fall, and I will be talking about this on the regular. And if anyone wants to email me for questions or consultations or to work with me, I'm at Mozenter@protonmail.com. And my last name is spelled Mozenter. Any other questions? We got 5 more minutes. I think coming up to the screen is the best way to ask the question. Yeah, I can hear you clearly when someone's up close.
What was your website again, please?
Yeah, it's my website's not up yet, but it'll be up in the fall. It's my last name, www.mozenter, M-O-Z, and the word enter, ENTER.com.
I'm very curious about coincidences. I would say about 5 to 6 times a week, I look at a clock and it's either 1:11 or 11:11.
Yep.
I see 4s. Is that a good sign?
Yeah, yes.
I mean, is that? Yes. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
It's basically when you become more, when the universe becomes more aware of itself, you'll tend to see these flashing numbers, 1111, 22, 33, 44, or any of the double numbers. You can look on websites. It's something called animism, where universe is winking at itself, and it's each of the numbers. Usually, it's a validation. I usually use it as I usually recommend people to just say like, "Hey, you're on the right path." Take it as a sign, as a right path. Don't overly worry about it, or don't get arrogant about it. But it's a positive thing for sure. Anything else? We got time for maybe one more question.
And do you have a YouTube channel?
Yeah, great question.
Repeat the question. YouTube channel.
Oh, I have a YouTube channel. I don't, but I will. I'm gonna go to Mozenter.com in the fall, or email me at Mozenter@protonmail.com, and I'll send you some of my podcasts. I've been on several podcasts, and so I'll definitely be spreading this information more widely starting in the fall.
Does anybody have any more questions for Jonathan? Awesome. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Yeah. You rock.
Thanks for listening. I appreciate it, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you very much.